As a third-year law student, I would say maybe 20 years ago, I worked in a legal clinic at my law school where I represented clients in immigration law. One of the clients I represented was seeking asylum in the U.S. due to domestic violence. She ultimately won the visa lottery, but had she not won the visa lottery, I am unsure if she would have been granted asylum in the U.S. Why? As with any form of immigrating to the United States, it's easy to get here, but hard to stay. I've got some explaining to do. Let's get into it. Hey there, Allians! Welcome back for another episode of Ayana Explains It All, the podcast hosted by the Black Muslim lady lawyer with an opinion on everything, born and raised in the hood, living in the suburbs of Northeast Ohio, avoiding the DIY projects that I have to do around the house because I'm a slacker this summer, including tuck pointing. What the hell is even that? I'm kidding. I know what it is. I just don't want to do it. Ayana Explains It All is the podcast available on 13 media streaming platforms, including Spotify, Amazon Music, Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, iHeartRadio, YouTube, to name a few. There are so many. There's Google Podcasts, there's Radio Public. I'm sure I'm forgetting one. If you go to the website, AyanaExplainsItAll.com, that's www.AyanaExplainsItAll.com, that's AYANA. You can find links to all of the sites that Ayana Explains It All streams from. You can also find links to the YouTube channel and all of the socials. You can also follow me on social media. You can link to that from the website as well, or you can follow me personally on social media. I do some pretty funny things on Instagram. That's LAWGURRL, Law Girl. I'm kind of boring on Facebook, a little boring on Twitter. But you can look me up there. Again, that's www.AyanaExplainsItAll. Go to the website and find all things Ayana Explains It All, including merch. I just bought a tote bag that has my trademarked title on it. So exciting. It's beautiful. I love it. It's just amazing. I'm in awe. It's all alhamdulillah. But you can go to the website and you can link to the shops. You can buy stickers, magnets, cups, tote bags, anything you want that has my beautiful emblem on it. Support the podcast by purchasing that, or you can become a patron of the podcast. Again, if you go to the website, you can see the links to how you can support the podcast. If you listen to this podcast through Spotify, Spotify also puts a link at the end of the description of the episode to show you how to support your favorite podcast. And I do hope that this is one of your favorites, and that you will also share it with people you know. Share it with a neighbor, a doctor, a customer service representative. I just want people to listen, hear what I have to say, hear my unique spin, hear my unique voice, opening up your minds, enlightening you. Ayana Explains It All bridges the gap between current events and human behavior. And this week, we need to figure out what the hell we're going to do about immigration policy in the United States. It's a mess. It's a mess. I know you're probably saying, oh, everything in the United States is a mess. Actually, every system of anything in this country is a mess. Yes. Social Security, taxes, the legislative branch, as you can see, with all of that George Santos mess, the judicial branch, as you can see, with the Supreme Court and Clarence Thomas and him receiving millions of dollars in gifts. And it's all a mess. But we're in a crisis that we have not seen since probably World War II, as far as immigration is concerned, and it's not being handled well. The concept of asylum in the United States can be traced back as far as the 1790s, when the U.S. Congress passed the first naturalization law, which allowed for the granting of citizenship to free white persons who had lived in the country for at least 2 years. The law also provided for the granting of asylum to those who had fled their home countries due to political persecution. that was obviously a popular reason to flee to the New World, to the United States, political persecution, but also religious persecution. That's why the pilgrims fucking came here. Because the kingdom didn't want their fucking crazy ass version of Christianity, and so they fled. But the kingdom still ruled over them. They still ruled over them here. And so we had to fight that dreadful war. That dreadful Revolutionary War. In the 19th century, the United States became a destination for political refugees and asylum seekers from Europe. In 1830, the U.S. Congress passed the first federal law on immigration, which established the framework for the regulation of immigration into the U.S. The law included provisions for the granting of asylum to those who had fled their home countries due to persecution. It used to be easy as hell. It used to be so easy. It is not this easy anymore. And why is that? Too many wars, too many refugees, too many places where there's civil unrest, too many places where this democracy shit ain't working, and there's civil unrest, and people are being persecuted, and people are fleeing. Too many climate things happening, earthquakes, tsunamis. I know Haiti, for instance, is rocked by hurricanes all the fucking time. Every hurricane season, a hurricane or two or three blows through Haiti. I don't even know how that country is still fucking standing, but they are. But with the increase of all of that, there are so many people who want asylum in other countries. Now, the United States, of course, is not the only country where people seek asylum. But it's the country that we're focusing on because this is where we are. This is where I am, at least. And there's so many changes happening. Like if you go to Europe, you have the European Union rules, but then the UK is not in the European Union anymore, partially because of immigrants. Throughout the 19th and early 20th centuries, the United States continued to be a destination for political refugees and asylum seekers, especially during World War II. The United States granted asylum to tens of thousands of individuals fleeing persecution and genocide in Europe. But in the aftermath of World War II, the United States played a key role in the creation of the United Nations and the development of international refugee law. The 1951 Convention relating to the status of refugees, which was signed by the United States, established the definition of a refugee and the obligations of states to provide protection to refugees, which I'm sure a lot of Americans in government, particularly of the Republican Party, wish we had never signed. They hate these international agreements. They hate them. They want us to get out of these international agreements. It's almost like they don't want the United States to be a part of the world. They want the United States to be its own little world. But unfortunately, that ain't how this works. The U.S. asylum system underwent significant changes in the latter half of the 20th century. And in 1980, the U.S. Congress passed the Refugee Act, which established the current legal framework for the U.S. asylum system. The law incorporated the definition of a refugee from the 1951 Convention and established the procedures for applying for asylum in the U.S. In the 21st century, however, for one very, very important reason called September 11, 2001, the U.S. asylum system has faced challenges and controversies, including a backlog of cases and changes to asylum policy under various administrations, the George W. administration, the Obama administration, Trump administration. In fact, in 2019, the Trump administration implemented a policy of requiring asylum seekers to remain in Mexico while their asylum claims were being processed in the United States, which was later blocked by courts because it's dumb and stupid and he's dumb and stupid. Oh, I'm sorry. It says here it wasn't constitutional. Okay. Yeah. Most recently, the COVID-19 pandemic has had a significant impact on the U.S. asylum system, as I explained in the beginning. The Trump administration used Title 42, a provision in United States law that allows for the restriction of entry into the country during a public health emergency. It's called Title 42 because it's based in Title 42 of the U.S. Code. It allowed the government to quickly expel migrants, including asylum seekers who arrived in the U.S. southern border, without allowing them to seek protection under U.S. asylum laws. So it basically said, fuck your dreams. Go back to your nightmares. Title 42, as a result, many asylum seekers were turned away at the border, the southern border, without any opportunity to apply for asylum or have their claims heard. The Biden administration continued to use Title 42 to expel migrants, which, the Biden administration has only recently, and by recently I mean this year, dropped COVID-19 pandemic protocols that were put in place for the federal government. For instance, there's no longer a mandate that federal employees receive the COVID-19 vaccine. I see this as the last thing to go, although some would also argue that he just wanted to continue to do this because he actually likes the idea of being able to expel migrants at the border, which, hell, may be true. One of the most annoying parts of what's happening now with Title 42 ending and the asylum laws changing, well, rules changing rather, because the law hasn't changed, is the Department of Homeland Security Secretary Alejandro Mayorkas keeps getting on TV doing interviews. Of course, he has to. He's the secretary of the Department of Homeland Security, and ICE and CBP and whatever, they're all underneath the Department of Homeland Security, thanks to George W. Bush. He's on TV saying, well, the Biden administration is doing this, and the Biden administration is doing that. And the Biden administration, we're going to make sure, and he's become just a parrot for the Biden administration. I'm a Democrat. I voted for Biden. I'm a Biden supporter. But there is a but. There's always a but, honey. I do not like it when people do not see their own faults. They're focused on making sure you know how important what they have done is. They want you to know how powerful they are, how good they've been, the good that they're doing. The way he speaks it's literally like he's not even answering questions. When reporters ask him questions, he's parroting talking points. He's got a tough job. It's not easy being the secretary of a cabinet, but one of the most important cabinets in the federal government. Everything rises and falls with you. People are looking to you. Anytime something happens that's even mildly related to your department, people are looking at you. It's a very stressful job. And if you don't act in a certain way or say things in a certain way or do things in a certain way, you're going to lose your job. The president can ask you to resign, or you can resign on your own. And instead of acknowledging the pitfalls of the new system, because there is a new system, a new way of applying for asylum that has never been seen before, that, we've never seen before, instead of acknowledging that there are issues and that there are faults and that we've fallen short in our goals, because we absolutely have, instead of acknowledging that, instead of saying, yes, we will do better, he just goes on to say, well, we've done this and we've done this thing and we've done this thing. And the reporter will ask him, well, what about the centers that you said you all were going to build to house migrants who came to the U.S. seeking asylum? Or the housing you said you were going to build in other countries for people who had sought asylum and who were waiting for adjudication of their claim? And instead of going, yes, those are not built yet, they're not on time, we're not on time with that, he goes, well, we have these things here instead. We have these centers where people can go and sit and wait, where children and women can go and blah, 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 blah. But those centers are overwhelmed. These centers that are at the southern border, they're overwhelmed. And so you may have seen on the news or Twitter or whatever, Governor Abbott of the state of Texas, who, by the way, is one of the most deplorable individuals on earth. I don't care that he's in a wheelchair. He's a jackass in a wheelchair. You can be a jackass in a wheelchair. Yeah. He's shipping migrants to Chicago and to DC and to New York City. And the mayors of these cities, who are not equipped to handle the presence of all of these hundreds of migrants in their city, are having to rush to find places to put them. These people are sleeping in police stations. They're sleeping in hotels. The one thing about the border towns in the state of Texas, for instance, the federal government provides resources to help the state of Texas house and police and shelter and care for people who arrive in the U.S. at the southern border until they are returned to where they came from if they are not eligible to stay in the U.S., or they are allowed to stay and they're moved to another location. The government provides extra money to the towns at the border, to the state of Texas. The government does not give money to the mayor of Chicago or the mayor of New York City to handle an influx of migrants in their cities. They don't get the extra money. They don't get the extra resources. They don't get the centers. They don't get the help that Texas receives, that the border towns receive. They don't have the resources to handle it. So while Abbott is sending people here and there and here and there and here, you're sending them places where these cities are not equipped like the cities in Texas are equipped to handle the influx of migrants. They don't have border patrol. They don't have ICE agents. Well, I mean, they do, but these people are not dispersed to handle hundreds of people present in their city overnight. They don't have the resources for it. So it's great. You want to send them here, send them, fine. Even when cities receive refugees from, say, Afghanistan or the Sudan, there are resources. There are resources. The government provides resources. There are nonprofit organizations that help people. They do fundraisers. They have host people who will shelter them. They have homes available to shelter people. They gather clothes and food for people. They're prepared for it. They're given the resources to prepare for it. They have community assistance to prepare for it. It doesn't mean that they're any more wanted. Of course, Americans are still prejudiced as fuck and rude and disgusting about refugees being in this country. But there's help. What's happening now is Governor Abbott is sending people to Chicago and New York City without sending money. I'm sure if you sent them a couple $1 million, they'd be happy to take the migrants. If you were sending them some of the money that you're receiving to deal with the border crisis, to deal with the presence of all of these migrants in your state, I'm sure they would be happy to help. So when he acts like he's just so forlorn, he can't figure out what is he going to do. Oh my God, my poor state of Texas. Motherfucker, you're getting money for this. You're getting money to do this. The federal government is not leaving you in the lurch. They're not like, oh, you got it. No, you're getting money for this. The government is providing resources to you to deal with it because it really is not your problem. It's the federal government's problem. It's not Texas's problem. It's not the border town's problem. It is the problem of the federal government. So they help you. They give you resources to deal with this. And you're acting like a little bitch because that is what you do, because you want to fan the flames. You want to get people worked up and riled up and see all of these busloads of immigrants and be like, what are the Democrats doing? Look at what Biden's doing. Blah. Once you find out what Biden really is doing, you're not going to be upset with him anymore because Biden isn't doing anything better than what Trump did. And you loved it when Trump did it. So you should love it when Biden did it. And Biden is a centrist. He's not a far left. He's not a far left Democrat. He's not going to be like, yes, let them all in. We want every single one of them to come to the U.S. We don't want any restrictions on immigration and asylum. The Biden administration has made it more difficult for people to seek asylum in the United States. Yeah, even though one of his campaign promises, one of the promises of the Democratic Party is to make the process more humane, to make immigrating to the United States more humane, to make seeking asylum more humane. It has in fact become incredibly difficult. Incredibly difficult. Under normal circumstances, and what we're experiencing now is obviously not normal circumstances, at least I would not call them normal circumstances. Asylum seekers apply for asylum as soon as they enter the U.S. That was before. That was now it's something completely different. It's something completely different. But back in the day, people would come into the U.S. and say, I want to seek asylum. They would, do their application. Their application would be processed and they would get a stay of removal until their application was adjudicated. Even if they were appealing a denial, they could still stay in the U.S. They wouldn't be returned. Now, you have to apply for asylum in the first country you reach. You have to apply for asylum in the U.S. in the first country that you reach through an app. An app. In February, the Biden administration announced that migrants seeking asylum would now be required to use the app to book appointments online with an immigration officer before they can make an asylum claim physically at the border. The app cannot be used within the U.S., but users must be near a U.S. border crossing to access its features. It's like how you have to you have to get close to someone's house to use their Wi-Fi. So you'll walk in front of their house, you'll stand in their driveway. That's how you have to be with this app, the CBP One app. You have to be close to the border to access its features. Beginning May 10th, the CBP allowed users to book appointments in the app anytime between 12 p.m. and 11 a.m. the next day, instead of only 6 a.m. each day in the older version. Once notified that the appointment has been booked, users will have 23 hours to confirm the appointment. And beginning May 12th, the app will also increase the total number of appointments available each day to around 1,000. Ooh. The agency will also gradually increase the number of appointments available as operations become more efficient, which will fucking be never. It's never going to become more efficient. It just gets worse. But, you hope for the best. And that information came from NBCMiami.com in an article published on May 12th. Now, if you spent your entire life savings getting to the United States, like you've paid a smuggler or you've paid whomever else to get you to the U.S. from Paraguay, from Costa Rica, from Panama, to get you to the U.S., you spent all of your money. How the fuck are you going to get a phone to use a smartphone app or get a computer? Where are you going to get computer access at? To use this app to apply for asylum. It's supposed to streamline the entire process, right? Make it easier. How does telling 2.5 people or 3 million people, how does telling 2.5 million people or 3 million people to log on at the same time and use this app to apply for asylum make it easier for them when you know that shit's going to crash? And in fact, it has crashed multiple times. And it has been inaccessible to millions of people. And it has been inaccessible to thousands of people. They log on to use it and it doesn't work because of site traffic. That's what happened. And, in the government, we know this. We know this because we deal with this shit all the time. We deal with this. We allow people to apply for benefits online. We know that at certain times of the day, certain times of the week, there's going to be congestion. There's going to be a lot of traffic. We know this around tax time when people are filing their tax returns. There's a lot of traffic to the IRS website all the time, and they have to upgrade the servers. We know this. We know it's difficult. So why would you tell all of these people to go online to check? Even remember during the pandemic when people were going online to check and see when their stimulus check was coming? And sometimes the website didn't work because there were millions of people trying to trying to see and figure it out. Well, that is what's happening with this app. I saw this on a few social media people that I follow, posting the videos of the migrants getting off the buses. And they're just so upset. What are you upset about? Your job as a social media influencer is not threatened by the presence of these migrants in your city. Yeah, I said it. They don't want your job. I mean, I'm sure they would love to have a job where they promote shampoo and fucking face rollers and shit and make a buttload of money doing it. But they want to be free, number one. Number two, they want to find jobs and work and make money and take care of the family that they have here with them, maybe, or the family that they have back in their home country. And you know what jobs they qualify to do anyway, because they speak little English, mostly? They're going to be doing unskilled labor. Even a person who was a doctor in another country or a dentist in another country, they can't just come here and be a doctor and a dentist. Especially for a dentist, you have to go to dental school again. Apparently, United States teeth are not the same as Syrian teeth. So you're worried that people are going to come and take your jobs? They don't fucking take your jobs. They don't even qualify for the job that you have. My job? I'm an attorney. They're going to take my job? Someone who's not an attorney is going to come and take my attorney job? Why are you mad? You're upset because you think this vast nation can't hold 3 million more people. Well, yes, the fuck it can. You ever been to Montana? North Dakota, South Dakota, Wyoming? All those places with all that open space? What were the states who, during the COVID-19 pandemic, were begging people to move there? To come live in our state. We'll pay you to come live in our state. I think it was Maine or Vermont or something. There are places that are, just a couple of hundred people living in a town. There are places that are sparsely populated. They're forcing women to fucking have babies because there aren't enough people in this country. The problem is, you don't want Hispanics and Haitians in this country. You don't want the people from what Donald Trump called the shithole countries in this beautiful, green, lush place of ours called the United States. You don't want those people here. And again, why? Why not? Why don't you want them here? DeSantis, or DeSatan as he's called, of Florida, just passed that law. Workers had to have documentation saying that they were legal to work in the United States in order to work in the state of Florida. And what have we seen? We've seen construction projects literally dry the fuck up. Places where they would have been finished in a few weeks, building a hotel or putting the finishing touches on a road, stopped. Because it's now a felony. It's now a felony to have someone working for you if they are not legal to work, if they don't have documents to work. Being an economic migrant now in the state of Florida, you're really risking a lot. And employing someone, you're risking a lot. But the work has to get done. Who's going to do it? Did you then see U.S. citizens lined up to do these construction jobs, these roofing jobs, these picker jobs on farms? No, the fuck you did not. Why? Because U.S. citizens don't want to fucking do those jobs. It's hard labor. It's sometimes very hot. The jobs are sometimes unsafe because a lot of these jobs, they're not following the OSHA regulations. They're not unionized, so there are no union protections. If you're a citizen and you work, you're a steel worker or an iron worker, those jobs come with protection. A lot of these construction companies, they want to hire people who can get the shit done quickly, and they don't have to ask questions, and they don't have to worry about paying you a certain amount, a fixed amount, a minimum wage. They can give you $100 for the day and you're happy to have it. No, Americans aren't going to tolerate it. And I'm not saying that we should. Employees should be protected. It should be safe to work. You should be paid a living wage to work. But these people, these economic migrants who are coming to the United States, they're dispensing with all of that because they are so desperate for money and a better life and a bed that's not just a mattress or a mat on a floor with 10 other people living in an apartment. They are so desperate that they will do any job. And those any jobs, that unskilled labor, that day labor, and that nighttime, overnight labor, I talked a couple of weeks ago about child labor and children working in factories. Those jobs, Americans don't want to do those jobs. And by Americans, I mean U.S. citizens. I don't mean to offend anyone. I'll say U.S. citizens from now on. But U.S. citizens are not lining up to do those jobs. Not that they're desirable anyway. Shit. If I thought somebody wasn't going to care that my finger almost got cut off, I wouldn't want to work for them either. Somebody's telling you that you can't take a break, but you know that you're entitled to 2 15-minute breaks. I probably wouldn't want to work for them either. Employers want to do business at a rate that sees them not spending a lot of money, but sees them as maximizing their profit and keeping as much money in their pockets as possible. That's why they don't like unions. That's why they don't like they don't like the minimum wage. They don't care about your documents. They don't care about work permits. They don't want to hear any of that shit. That costs money. They don't want to hear about unemployment insurance. That costs money. Slip and fall? Oh, well. What are you going to do? Sue me? You're not even legally supposed to be working here, so you can't sue me. But getting back to Title 42, as a result of Title 42, many asylum seekers were turned away at the border. And now people are thinking, at least this is what they were told, a lot of the migrants were told, that the U.S. borders would be open once Title 42 ended, but that's not the case. They were told something that's not true in a promise to take their money to get them to the U.S. All of these smugglers and coyotes, all they want is your money. They're not trying to help you. They'll take you to the border and they'll drop you off. They'll drop a kid off. You know, border agents have found kids wandering by themselves, like little kids, like 5 and 6 year olds, who just have notes attached to them and phone numbers and an address for family who are already in the U.S. These people, the smugglers, don't care. They do not care. They'll take your money. That's what they want. They want your money. They tell you that, oh, you know, the borders, they're going to open up when Title 42 expires. And then you get here and you find out that's not the case. You find out, in fact, that you cannot even get into the country to apply for asylum because you were supposed to use some stupid fucking app in the first country you stopped in to apply for asylum. And of course, critics of Title 42 argued that it violated U.S. and international law, which provides for the right to seek asylum and protection from persecution. And I gotta tell you, it's kind of hard to disagree with that. The policy was also criticized for putting vulnerable migrants in harm's way by forcing them to return to dangerous situations in their home countries. And this is true of asylum in general. I mean, just because you apply doesn't mean you're going to get it. And you might be telling the truth about what's happening in your country, like victims of domestic violence, people who are threatened with persecution because of their religion, because of their sexual orientation. You might be telling the truth. And it's hard as hell to prove to a government official and then a judge that if you're returned, you're going to be killed. You're going to be killed when your family members are also suffering because of who you are or what you believe. It's hard to prove it. You have to have examples. You have to have evidence. You have to have statements. You have to have, sometimes sworn testimony. You have to have pictures. You have to have newspaper articles, maybe. It's difficult. So just because Title 42 is no longer in place doesn't mean that it's suddenly easier for people to seek asylum and that it's suddenly going to be better. No, it's not. And that's the unfortunate part, is that we are approaching a humanitarian crisis inhumanely. But it just speaks to a broader issue that the immigration policy of the United States has been worn away. It's ineffective. It's not working. The machine is not working. It's sick. And it needs to be repaired with reform. Reform is the only way we're going to fix this. But while the Democrats and the Republicans and whoever else agrees that it's broken and needs to be fixed, they cannot agree on what needs to be done. Because, of course, the GOP, the Republicans, if they had it their way, nobody would get in. It would be closed borders. It'll be like when Herbert Hoover was closing the borders and not allowing Jewish immigrants into the U.S. who were fleeing persecution in Europe, because they didn't want any more migrants coming in. The United States had just been, open borders. Anybody who reached our shores, anybody who sailed to the new world, to the new land, could come and stay. And the attitudes about migrants, about immigrants, had turned so ugly. The attitude about having people come to the U.S. had turned so ugly that instead of allowing Jewish people to come to the U.S. because they were fleeing persecution and the Holocaust in Europe, we closed the borders, turned them away, said, nope, you can't come in. Hoover decided that we were not going to allow any more migrants into the U.S. because of unemployment and the Great Depression, and Americans believing that jobs in the U.S., jobs and charity in the U.S. should be for American citizens only. And so what happened when Jews were starting to flee Europe because of Hitler advancing and the Holocaust, and it wasn't quite World War II yet, but they could see what was happening, and they were being turned away at the border. They were being turned away. Ships of Jewish people coming to the U.S. were being turned away because we were no longer allowing people to migrate to the U.S. We were scared. We were afraid that people were going to come and take our jobs. It's always this fear that people are going to come and take our jobs. The following information comes from the New York Times in an article published on May 10th, 2023. And it says the most recent major U.S. laws for refugees, asylum seekers, and immigration enforcement date to the 1980s and 90s. None have been significantly updated to adapt to modern challenges. For instance, the limits on visas allowing people to work in the United States were based on the size of its economy in the 1990s. Those limits have largely remained the same, even though the economy has since grown more than twice as large. In addition, the facilities built on the border were originally designed to hold Mexican men who crossed illegally in search of work. They resemble jail-like settings where people are crammed into a single space. The government has acknowledged that these facilities are not safe to hold children and other vulnerable populations. Over the past decade, the United States has set up additional temporary spaces to accommodate the needs of families and children, but it is still not enough to address the large numbers of people entering the country. Enforcement measures at the border were largely devised for migrants who were trying to evade being caught by the authorities, not for thousands of people fleeing humanitarian crises who turned themselves in to the authorities once they reached the border, many hoping to seek asylum. While the Biden administration has promised to make changes to the asylum system, the Biden administration promised to make changes to the asylum system, but they didn't tell us they were going to be for the not so great, not so good. As I told you before, it went from being a 12-step process to a now 15-step process. And this information is coming from an article published by Al-Jazeera.com on May 10th, 2023. It says that what the Biden administration has rolled out is a new rule to incentivize use of lawful migration pathways. It pointed to a recent decision to allow as many as 30,000 people from Cuba, Haiti, Nicaragua, and Venezuela to legally enter the U.S. each month, provided they apply in advance and meet certain criteria as one such lawful pathway. But there's always a but. Human rights groups have criticized that policy because it was combined with an announcement that Mexico had agreed to take back 30,000 asylum seekers from those four countries each month if they sought to cross the U.S. border irregularly. This is just insanity. Following a call between Biden and Mexican President Andrés Manuel López Obrador, the White House said Mexico City had committed to continuing to accept expelled people from those countries after the expiration of Title 42. The Biden administration also recently announced plans to open migration centers in Colombia and Guatemala, which will be staffed by U.S. agents, a move that accompanied plans to expedite screenings and deportations of those who cross into the U.S. but do not qualify for asylum. And Mayorkas said Washington was launching a digital advertising campaign in Central and South America to counter the lies of smugglers as well. He tried to place so much of the blame on smugglers when, dude, it's just so fucking confusing. Seeking asylum in the U.S. has become so confusing. I'm confused just talking to me. I'm hearing myself say these things and I'm like, you got to do what? Who, huh? You got to go to Guatemala? You got to go to Colombia? Huh? I got to use an app? No, I got to tell Mexico that I'm seeking asylum, but I didn't get it, so they'll take me back? Huh? Under the new asylum rule, people crossing the border will not be considered to have sought a lawful pathway if they did not first apply and get an appointment via the CBP One app. I mentioned that before. Authorities said the rule will not apply if a person can establish it was not possible to access or use the app due to specific and extraneous circumstances, significant technical failure, or other applicable exceptions. So if you tried to use the app and it didn't work, that new asylum rule that says people crossing the border will not be considered to have sought a lawful pathway if they did not first apply and get an appointment via the app. If you can prove that the app didn't work when you tried to use it, then that rule does not apply to you. So what rule applies to you? Who the fuck knows? But the new rule also will not apply to unaccompanied minors or anyone who sought but was denied asylum in another country, according to the Department of Homeland Security. The rule presumes this is Secretary Mayorkas again. The rule presumes those who do not use lawful pathways to enter the United States are ineligible for asylum and allows the United States to remove individuals who do not establish a reasonable fear of blah, 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 blah. Sir, please, let's have a come to glory moment here, sir. You are trying to speak to people who, number one, don't speak the language you're speaking. Number two, are probably not as well educated as you, Mr. Mayorkas. You're trying to speak to them and tell them these things, and you're trying to communicate the new asylum rules to people who are desperate, they're hungry, they're hot, they're tired. Ain't nobody listening to this shit. I don't even want to listen to it. I see your face on TV and I'm just like, oh, here go this dude again. Dude, I just please tell people how to apply for asylum. Number one, tell them how. And don't give them the fucking, well, you step one, step two. No. How about we take this shit back to basics? You get to the port, you apply, and you wait. What is with this app? And then you got to apply in the country you reached first. Then if you don't get it, you can go back to Mexico, but they're only taking 30,000 people. It's not easy. It's not supposed to be easy. It's not meant to be easy. It's supposed to be hard. It's supposed to be hard. It's made hard on purpose so that people will say fuck it and not bother. The surge in migration points to a greater issue. Unrest in the international community won't be solved. It will not be solved. To say the U.S. immigration system is broken is like saying rainwater is wet. Every system in the U.S. is broken, and it's strained by the presence of unnatural circumstances or climate change or the presence of more people or war or any kind of civil unrest or any kind of catastrophic event that happens, and it puts pressure on the different systems of the United States to perform faster, to perform more efficient. And really, you can only be as efficient as the people present working for you. But immigration, for some reason, again, is the one thing people cannot agree on how we should fix it. I have not seen any good ideas, frankly. The point is not to allow everyone who wants to come into the U.S. to come into the U.S. The point is to treat these people humanely, no matter how they come into the U.S. If they cross at the border, if they slip through the wall or the gate or the fence, if they arrive at a port, if they come through an airport, the point is that they should be treated humanely, is that they should be afforded all the rights that they are entitled to. Anyone who's present in the U.S. is covered by the U.S. Constitution. But these people are not clogging up the welfare system because you cannot get welfare if you are not a citizen of the U.S. You cannot get Social Security, disability if you are not a citizen of the U.S. You cannot get these things if you're not a citizen of the U.S. But is it so quirky and irregular and unheard of to treat people with humanity when they're present here, whatever the circumstances of their arrival? Is it terrible that we treat people with humanity and empathy? It isn't terrible. In fact, it is preferred. But that's just me. I'm an empathetic person. I'm not a bleeding heart liberal, but I do feel for people. I feel for people who are experiencing that kind of strife. I can't imagine what they're going through. And so for me to turn my nose up at them would be hypocritical. I'm not going to do it. And I wish more people felt like how I feel. I wish more people were open and empathetic so that at least people know they're coming to the U.S. They may not get to stay, but they know that their case will be heard. They know that they'll be treated fairly. Right now, people come here. They come here based on a lie. But then when they get here and they see all of this ugliness and acid thrown at them, all of these ugly attitudes, and people putting them on a bus and shipping them to Martha's Vineyard and saying, "Here, you're a rat, you're nasty, you're disgusting. Just get on this bus and get the hell out of my face." When you're treated as less than a human, when you've already come from degrading and terrible circumstances, that cannot bode well for your emotional health, your mental health, your psyche. You don't want to take someone who already feels like shit and make them feel worse. And that is what I feel like the current policy is doing, the current administration is doing, is continuing the ugliness of the Trump administration, continuing to allow these exclusionary policies. Now, Trump came right out and said it and said, we don't want people from shithole countries. He was talking about African countries and some South American and Central American countries, calling them shithole countries. You'll never hear a Democrat say that, but we see that Republicans have come up with a sweeping immigration bill in the House of Representatives, but also there are Democrats who have come up with new asylum proposed rules as well, but they don't match. Democrats are basically saying, we want a fair, orderly, and humane immigration system. And Republicans are saying, we want to end asylum. We want it to be so restrictive that no one gets to come into the U.S. Back to the old Herbert Hoover days. They want to make it easier for the federal government to stop migrants from entering the U.S. They want to secure the border, which is a talking point you hear in their platform quite often. Secure the border because the border is so dangerous, right? There's so many people coming in through the border. They're so concerned with illegal border crossings when illegal border crossings have been a thing since Clinton, Reagan, Ford. But they're saying under Biden, illegal border crossings have increased, and that if they revert back to the restrictive policies of Donald Trump, then that will decrease illegal border crossings. There's more than one way to try to get somebody into the U.S. It's not just illegally crossing through the fence, through the border wall or whatever. There's so many different ways. You put up a wall, they'll find some other way. There's nothing stopping people who are determined to get to a greater life, better opportunities. If where they were was wonderful, was great, was safe, was secure, they wouldn't bother with this fucking place. How many people do you see from countries where everything is going great come to the U.S.? They might come for jobs, but they're not coming because this is such a wonderful place to be. I mean, we have a fucking mass shooting every day here. People come to this country and they think everything's going to be great and wonderful and rainbows and shit, and they go to the mall and they get shot in the head. If things were wonderful where these people live, they would not bother with the U.S. We're not better than any other place, any other developed country. We're not better. We just happen to be in close proximity to Mexico, Central America, South America. If it was England, they'd be going to England. If it was Germany, they'd be going to Germany. People do go to Germany. They go to Spain. They go to Italy. They go to Denmark. People will go where they can get to. They will swim in the fucking ocean. They'll put a raft in the ocean with sharks. And they'll pray that they make it to their destination. If it was so great where they lived, they would not put their bodies in that water. They wouldn't cram themselves and their children into vans. They wouldn't put their lives in danger. They wouldn't agree to be smuggled in the cargo hold of a ship, or in one of those shipping containers, or in a truck, in an 18-wheeler with no AC, no air supply. They wouldn't do that if where they lived was as good as where they were going. And because we know that, because we know what these people are facing, we know what circumstances they're coming from, what they're fleeing, we should treat them humanely. We should treat them humanely. One of the few remaining legal pathways migrants have who are fleeing violence in their home country is asylum. There are few, and asylum is it. Asylum is the biggie. Asylum is the one that everybody, when they think about fleeing their country, they immediately think, this makes me a refugee. I'm going to seek asylum. I'm an asylum seeker. I should be welcomed in any country. And the fact that we have made it difficult, more difficult than it already was, for people to flee violence and find protection in another country is abhorrent. It's outrageous. I'm disappointed. I am disappointed in the Biden administration. I am disappointed. I'm disappointed in the Biden administration. I'm disappointed in Congress. I'm disappointed in the American people who continue to allow themselves to be bamboozled by the big bad wolf syndrome. These are the people who are coming to eat you. who allow themselves to continue to be tricked into othering migrants who come into this country, who will continue to allow themselves to be tricked to have ugly attitudes about other human beings, who allow themselves to be scared for no reason. You have absolutely no reason to be scared. The danger that you think is coming from them is already present in the United States. Go look at the news. You get choked to death on a subway train. You can get shot in line at McDonald's. You can get ambushed in your driveway. You can get killed by police. You can get robbed, carjacked on your way to the drugstore by U.S. citizens. But it shouldn't matter who it is. The violence you think is coming is already here, and it's been here. So while they're using immigration and migrants and, oh, these dirty people are coming from these shithole countries, they're using this to distract you so that they don't have to deal with the other issues that they are not dealing with, the campaign promises they are not delivering on. They're going to use this as a distraction. They're always using people and lies to distract us from the real problems, the real issues in the United States. Notice how when we talk about immigrants, we stop talking about guns. Unless we're talking about immigrants coming in buying guns, which, who is spreading this fucking lie that a migrant can come in the U.S. and buy a gun and kill people? Have you seen the recent shootings? They were all committed by people born and raised in this fucking country. Are you watching? Are you looking? Are you paying attention? Go look at the facts. The facts, not people's opinions, not people's scary tales from the board. You look and decide for yourself. And hopefully you come out on the side of humaneness and empathy. Hopefully you come out on the side of calling your U.S. representative and telling them to get with other members of their party to come up with a plan to fix immigration policy in the U.S. Because this isn't just on the president. This is on Congress. This is on the Senate. The people that we vote for to be in those positions, they work for us. We don't work for them. They serve us. And right now they are doing us a disservice. They're doing the world a disservice by not fixing the system so that more people can find a legal pathway to flee violence in their home country. The pursuit of safety in the United States should not be closed off to people who need it. It should be expanded. It should be guaranteed. It should be easy. Legal pathways to immigrating to the United States should be the focus of immigration law and policy. Legal pathways to encourage people to come to the U.S. to work, to seek education, to flee violence. We have a responsibility to the international community, not just based on agreements we've signed. It's because we constantly boast that we have the greatest economy in the world, that we have the greatest military in the world, we have the greatest economic system. We're great, we're great, we're great, we're great, we're number one. We put all of this out there, and then we get mad when people want to take advantage of it. It doesn't make sense. There are some solutions. We don't have to remain stalled. My disappointment in the Biden administration and the Republicans and Congress and the Senate remains, but there are solutions that we can implement to make sure that the asylum process is humane, that the entire immigration process, immigrating to the United States, is humane. First, The U.S. asylum policy should be streamlined to reduce backlogs and delays. This can be achieved through increasing funding for the asylum system, as well as hiring additional personnel to process applications. Additionally, clear guidelines and criteria for asylum applications should be established to reduce confusion and ensure fairness. The U.S. government should also prioritize the adjudication of asylum applications to prevent lengthy processing times. Another key issue, of course, is access to legal representation for asylum seekers. Many asylum seekers are not able to afford legal representation, and the process of applying for asylum can be complicated and intimidating, as you can see with the CBP app. The U.S. government should provide legal aid to asylum seekers to ensure that they have access to representation throughout the process, and this will ensure that asylum seekers are able to present their cases effectively and receive a fair hearing. There's the application, and then there's the appealing of the application when you go before an immigration judge. And that process can be complicated, and you may require legal representation. Some people can represent themselves, but I wouldn't recommend representing yourself before an immigration judge. The cases are complex. The legal system governing immigration is complex, but a lot of people cannot afford attorneys. And the U.S., if someone is seeking asylum, they should be afforded low cost or even free legal representation, which I know, free, oh my God, socialist. But to reduce the number of asylum seekers, the U.S. should also address the root causes of migration. This could involve increasing foreign aid to countries that are experiencing political instability or violence, as well as addressing economic inequality and climate change. What? Did I say address climate change? We don't. By addressing the root causes of migration, however, the U.S. can help reduce the need for individuals to seek asylum in the first place. Also, the U.S. asylum policy should be more welcoming and inclusive. As I said before, the country has a long history of welcoming refugees, and this diversity has been a source of strength and innovation. The government should promote this diversity by eliminating policies that discriminate against certain groups and creating programs that encourage integration and assimilation. While the U.S. asylum policy is in urgent need of reform, there are easy answers to fixing what's broken. It just takes both parties agreeing that this is what needs to happen. But of course, you have one party who does not want anyone to come in, and then another party who wants people to come in, but who wants the process to be. And then another party who doesn't mind people coming in as long as they go through legal, lawful pathways and the process is humane. By streamlining the system, of course, providing access to legal representation and protecting vulnerable populations, and addressing the root causes of migration while promoting inclusivity, the U.S. can create a more effective and just asylum policy. And this has been Ayana Explains It All, brought to you by Facts, Figures, and Enlightenment. Take care.